Hi, this lecture may not be for you if you don't like using your hotkeys. Also, it can feel overwhelming once we get past 3 or 4 shortcuts. Before you decide, you have a cheat sheet attached to this video where everything is nicely laid out. In case anything is unclear, you can always revisit this lecture. Okay, it's time to skip ahead if hotkeys aren't for you. If you're 100% committed, then I salute you. Let's get started. I'll focus on what I use daily, so none of those extra complicated ones just for the fun of it. Ctrl-J is one of the most used hotkeys in Photoshop. It duplicates the currently selected layer and places it above it. This is useful because sometimes you'll have to work on your layer directly and you might mess it up. Your copy is going to act like your insurance. It also works on several layers or groups at a time. Ctrl-G is another indispensable hotkey because every project that has, say, over 10 layers should contain groups. If you use it without anything selected, you'll end up with an empty one. No worries, you can simply drag your layers inside it. If you want to change Photoshop's behavior by dropping a layer at the bottom of a group, add Shift before you start dragging it. Please note that if you drag, then hold Shift, it's not going to work. Photoshop will work as usual. It will place it above all those other layers. And the recommended way of creating a group is to first select your layers and then use Ctrl-G. Ctrl-T is an essential command because you'll likely want to resize, rotate, distort, warp and so on. So far, nothing too complicated. Ctrl-Alt-C is great when you want to enlarge or shrink your canvas and you require precision. Please note that if you want to add 100 pixels to the top part of your canvas, you have to click on this bottom middle arrow. I know it may seem confusing, so let me bring this up again. If you require space in a certain section, say the left side, first use these arrows in the opposite direction. Here I'll move it to the right, and that leaves me 3 empty squares to the left. That means any value I put in here will be reflected in that region. Let me press OK. Right, I hope this makes sense. In case you don't use these arrows and you leave it as is, Photoshop will distribute that value. For example, 100 extra pixels in width will mean 50 pixels on each side. That's the Resize Canvas command, an alternative for the crop tool, which can also shrink or expand your work area. The next hotkey is Ctrl-Alt-I. That's the image resize command. I suggest you either shrink it down by using %, or if you specifically know what you're looking for, you can change it to pixels. This one is a bit longer, but I use it fairly often. Alt, Control, Shift, E. This creates a new layer that contains everything that's visible on the canvas. If you want to remember it quickly, think of the Merge command, which is Ctrl-E. On top of that, add all the modifier keys on your keyboard. Ctrl-1 brings your zoom level to 100%, and I strongly recommend you make a habit of returning to that normal viewing mode. Speaking of that, F helps you get into full screen mode. Hit it once and you'll end up with this. Hit it again and you'll hide every potential distraction. When your project is very long, I suggest you constantly switch between Ctrl-1 and Ctrl-0. The last one makes your project fit your current screen size. Let me show you how I use a combination of these hotkeys in a real project. This is quite a long canvas, as you see from these scroll bars. When you're dealing with such a project, Ctrl-1 isn't enough. You have to get the full picture. For that, I use Ctrl-0, then I enter full screen mode by tapping F twice. I take a good look, then I switch to the zoom tool with Z, and I click a few times. Not too much, but just a bit so I can better understand what's going on. Now that I'm closer, I never use my mouse scroll to go up or down because it's going to take me forever to get to the other end of the project. So what I do is add Shift to the mix. And as you can see, my view jumps significantly. It only takes 2 or 3 swipes of my mouse scroll to get to the other end. You can think of it as a page up, page down command. If you want to remember it easily, just think of what Shift does in all cases. If you're moving a layer with your arrow keys, Shift makes it jump in 10 pixel increments. If you're adjusting your opacity with your mouse scroll, it does the same thing. So it makes sense to use it when you want to browse around fast inside a long project. Note it works even if you're not in full screen mode. Finally, use Ctrl and your square bracket keys to move a layer inside your Layers panel. On the other hand, Alt and your brackets select a different one. There's loads of other hotkeys, but these are the most important ones that I suggest you integrate into your daily workflow. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching this lecture, even though it's difficult to get all this information in one sitting. I appreciate your strong desire to learn.